Thoughts, questions, please?
What will the student-to-teacher ratio be?
The student-teacher ratio. Steve?
Basically, a lot depends on enrollment, so I can't give you an exact number, but the plan is we recommend no more than 25 kids in a class. That's the average we shoot for. So in terms of the lower grades, our hope is the lower grades will start with one of each. We think we're hoping to have two of each on the upper grades, but the goal is 25 students in each class.
Will they expand the building then?
Except pre-K.
Well, you know, it's interesting at St. Lawrence, is an interesting point. The parish uses certain space in the school. The parish will vacate that space in the school building. So we have the use of the building. And that's thanks to Father Jones, who's somewhere here in the back. And the planning is at St. Lawrence.
I also saw the fundraising goal, there was 100,000, and that's something that it was on one of your slides before.
Yes.
That would be for the new year.
That is what's projected, and I think that's in line with what is being, if you actually add up the fundraising of St. Joseph's, St. Jude's, and St. Lawrence, it actually is higher than 100, so they're being conservative.
And that's the responsibility of the parents and the students?
It's not a fee, it would be the fundraising, different activities to add up to the 100,000.
But the parents have to organize it.
Well, it all depends, because if there's a committee, for example, for development, it would be a board's responsibility to sponsor those. But they would ask for parents' help, like they do now. But there are also others who can come to help as well.
I'm just thinking in terms of, we have a brand new name. I've done a lot of the fundraising with the team.
Yeah.
As I
And which
know
school, if I may?
St. Lawrence.
Okay.
I know St. Jude's does a great golf tournament. I know
Yep.
St. Joe's does a great carnival.
We're going to marry them all.
Awesome, but a lot of the fundraisers that we get are alumni, parents
Yes.
of alumni, as I'm sure the other schools do as well.
Yes.
So, and are we affiliated with any one church?
You're actually affiliated with all three. Because the truth is, as the members, that's what I meant about the pastors being members. As members, they are the sponsors. So technically speaking, it's the leadership of the three parishes and the gospel bishop that's sponsoring the school. So technically, it's sponsored by all three, even though it's really housed at St. Lawrence, which is different from just being sponsored by St. Lawrence. But now, to answer your question about the fundraisers, I think part of what we're going to have to work through is to draw forces together in the three communities.
I think the whole idea to have these committees is awesome, but we struggle to get people just to show up for fun events. So to get people to volunteer to run these committees, I think is a huge challenge across all of the
Yes.
schools. So it sounds awesome, I
Yes.
just think it would be a huge challenge.
Yes. Well, again, I'm very open. The first year is going to take time for us to identify all the right people to sit on these committees. But the more important committees will have to be populated first. See, the truth is, for many of you, my friends, you may be willing, but if you're obligated with so many other things to do, it's a time question. It's a time question. But in my experience doing this, it works. It works if we're patient, and we have to look in places where we have not looked before. Because one of the things we need to remind people is our schools have a community benefit. It's not just because your children benefit, although that's the heart of it, but our community benefits as well. And therefore, in the academy structure, you can ask community leaders and other people to join in a way as decision makers. And sometimes what I've experienced is, if you ask me for money, but I don't have any say in the larger mission, it's a harder ask than if I have a real vested interest as well. So, and I'm committed to help you to do that. And usually when the bishop comes to ask, it's a harder thing. But I have gotten plenty of no's.
I didn't see anything up there, but is there anything for after school, like an after school program for our children to go to?
Well, I think, do you want to get that, Steve?
Yeah, there will be before care, there'll be aftercare programs. We have to look at the times and figure out how to best work that. But basically, we'll have a conversation with the three principals, talk about what programs you have, what do you offer, what time do your after-school programs end, what time does your before care start, and we will create a system that, to the best of our ability, works for everyone. Okay, the other question I'm going to answer before someone answers, just because I'm already standing here, is uniform. Because I'm sure that's always one of the hot topics. We struggled with this because, on one hand, we don't want people to incur more money. We don't want it to cost more. But on the other hand, we're creating a new identity. And the last thing we want is kids in different uniforms. We want everybody to come together as one new community. So what we've decided to do for the first year is we will stick with simple khaki pants, khaki skirts, and a white, or I think it's white or blue, or maybe just white. It's in the frequently asked questions. Polo shirt that you can get at Kohl's, you can get at Target, or you can get it from an online uniform company. And then the board and its committees will work to develop a uniform more long term. But we figure that would be an easier transition. Okay?
Please.
That was a great answer, thank you. What about the time of the school? Will the school hours be the same?
Okay, so now, yes. So these are all excellent questions. And the truth is, between now and the end of March, we will have those answers. Because one of the things we need to do is get this group now that's transitional planning in dialogue with the principals, in dialogue with other leaders, to see what works best, because the schools don't all start at the same time now.
And then we also just, I'm hoping we can marry the buses.
Well, you see, now that is an issue.
Or at least Shelton.
The Shelton two schools, obviously you could share the bus system.
Well, if you keep the same time.
Right. So that's all part, that's why the board has to get cracking. As soon as this meeting ends, they gotta get to work.
And that's why there's a fine balance with some of the answers we don't know to the questions, because remember, part of this is we don't just want to start imposing a school and imposing things. We want to empower people to have a say. That takes a little time.
The one thing I'm going to also highlight for you, my friends, is that this becomes, this now, if we're going to do this for the good of our children, and we're all agreed that is the goal, this begins a dialogue process, a collaborative process. This cannot be just the board doing it on its own. The board needs to reach out for input and then dialogue with you and inform you, led by the superintendent until there's an actual chair. Because if this is going to work, and it will, the collective wisdom of the group is going to guide us to make sure we make the right decisions. We decided the tuition simply because we needed to start registration, and we were hoping to be fair across the board. Please, all the way in the back first, please.
Obviously, with enrollment being so critical at this point, and us having missed the opportunity to put down the schools week, the open house, what's the plan around, gathering in your students? And
Yeah, I think what we're going to do now is, now that we've had this meeting, we are going to start a marketing campaign for the school. And again, we have to be sensitive, because the initial is there is a new school being born. But now the details, as they unroll here, they will roll out to the rest of the community. The other thing too is, and this is just, and I just feel I need to say this, I especially appreciate the fact that you are here on a Friday night. But this whole process is going on in Danbury, Brookfield, Stanford, and here. It's not just Shelton and Monroe. I've had 4 parent meetings. And in Stanford, I announced the creation of a single academy, merging 4 schools on Wednesday night, and with 2 campuses. And in 2020, it will become 1 school with 1 campus. So it's not just Shelton and Monroe. These demographic trends are all over going on, not just here. Please.
On the second board, on the second board, are there members, how many members are there going to be? And are they going to be from each allocated school? Or?
Well, that's an excellent question. There's a discretion in the bylaws. The model that we use, the template, is anywhere between 5 and 13. I usually like to aim for 11, an odd number, because they'll be voting. As for the qualification, right now, the transitional committee represents people from different parishes. If they remain, then there would be that diversity. If not, we will seek the diversity so that all the parishes are represented.
Well, as a pair from St. Lawrence, I mean, we would definitely like to include, to make sure that the other schools that are coming over,
Yes.
to make sure that they're on that board,
Yes.
to, welcome them in to
Yes,
our group.
thank you. Thank you. In the back, go to, sir, please.
What plans, if any, do you have for the actual facilities and the buildings that are closing? And do you have any plans for expansion on that campus?
Now, for the school buildings that are not going to be used for this academy, that becomes now a parish issue. And I will be back in my other capacity, all right, to talk to the pastors. because parish leadership needs to sit down and ask, what is it now we wish to do with this facility? Some parishes where schools have been repurposed have used it only for parish activity. Others have rented portions of the building. Some have rented the whole building. But that becomes a parish because it is a parish property. And then the diocese will be of help as best we can, depending on what decision is made, to try to support that decision. So that becomes a parish.
As far as expansion,
Expansion of a facility in a parish?
expansion on, say, the St. Lawrence campus? Or
Right. If we were to grow this school, please God, dramatically, and we needed to expand St. Lawrence, one of the reasons we went to St. Lawrence is that there is room in the back to actually build on the building. And just that you're aware, in Stanford, I already announced a $2 million campaign to renovate the space for the middle school in Stanford. And if after the first year, our numbers are really significantly high, then I think in our strategic planning for the board, we can look at the possibility of expansion even at St. Lawrence. But we're going to do it one step at a time. One step at a time. Please, sir.
I understand the possibility of expansion, but forget expansion for a second, just this physical plan, is there a plan to put some CapEx into the building as it exists today?
Well, I think that's going to be one of the board's first tasks, is to take a deeper look. And to the extent that we need to, we will raise that money.
You mentioned about the learning initiative. Something that you're anticipating is going to start come September? Teachers
No.
will be trained?
No, well, I should say no. I don't think so. Because the teachers need to be trained. So you need to create, so just that you're aware, in a truly blended learning model, and I'll defer to the expert, my experience has been the traditional setup of the classroom is totally rearranged. There are workstations. And then there's a traditional part of the classroom. So it's not completely that way. So you have to put the infrastructure in, the hardware, you have to train your teachers to do it. So it can't be done lickety-split. But we can roll it out even mid-year. It doesn't have to be at the beginning of the academic year either. So that's part of the strategic plan that we're going to work on together. Is that a fair representation?
Yeah, except I would just add that we can do some components of blended learning, you know, the schools that have the school has the infrastructure already for some of that, so we can do some versions of that and then just keep training the teachers. And it's really just moving from a linear way of teaching where everybody does the same thing at the same time to a more parallel, where you have kids working in groups and they work independently, then collaboratively, then with the teacher, and cycle through. So I think there are some components of it we can start in September, and then we'll continue to expand it as we go.
That's why he's the expert. But let me just say one other thing too, if I may. I am absolutely committed to ensure that our schools remain at the cutting edge. And if we can create a system similar to this that allows every student to realize his or her full potential, that's our goal. That is our goal. And if a person is capable of doing algebra in the 6th grade, then he or she should be able to do that. That's basically it. We need to put, and it sounds crazy, but there are some schools that have that as early as the 6th grade. Please.
I have one more question. Being that this was Catholic schools week and enrollment, it was kind of stalled at the 3 schools that were involved in this.
Yep.
And now the new enrollment's going to start on the 15th. Is there anything, I mean, kind of right now, people have been
Well,
shied away
actually,
from
re-enrollment, re-registration
Right.
can start.
No, for us immediately, I understand.
Right.
But like for the people that, I mean, to continue the viability of our schools, the whole
Yep.
reason that we did this process was
Yep.
to increase enrollment from the beginning, from pre-K 3 and 4. That's what continues to grow the school. Having the other people come over from the other schools is great because that'll help the short-term problem, but we still need the new class to come in.
Yes.
So what are we going to do to compensate us not advertising to?
Well, we
move
have to
these people
start
to
now.
new-
That's the point.
Right, but does the diocese have a plan to?
No, I think
like,
there is going to be a
see
plan.
that marketing towards?
Yeah, the superintendent can talk to that.
Yeah, we've started putting together the the brochures, the website, all that stuff so that we can pivot to enrollment for new kids. Really, the challenge was waiting to get everybody on board, so that we know exactly what we're offering. And, really being able, until this was announced, to have in-depth conversations with teachers about their programs and things like that, to put together the best marketing materials that sort of held it up. But we have the bones, we're gonna put it together, we'll schedule open houses once we get the administrators hired, which will be as quickly as possible. We're going to schedule an open house for the other schools, and we're going to work with the principals of St. Jude and St. Joseph to schedule days to bring students over so that everybody gets a chance to see St. Lawrence if you haven't. And then we're also next week, people from my office will be visiting the school to talk to the kids, to make sure that they understand why this is a positive thing, and to talk a little bit about the school. And then the hope is, as we start developing new programs, we can have the new principal come over and talk to the kids about the new program we're going to find at the school. So I think that there's part of it is marketing to the current parents, and then also reaching out to mostly preschool. Because quite honestly, our hope is that if the majority of you come over, the school will be pretty much full. Right? If we come together as a community and everybody, or a good percentage of people, the school will be full. Now, then we just have to work on the lower grades. And then we can talk about the space.
Dr. Cheever?
Yeah, please. Yeah, please.
Can you define what full means? Do you have a hard cap on enrollment? And then secondly, per grade level, do you have a hard cap on class size? Because 240 on your budget divided by 10 grade levels is 24 kids per class. And that was just a number. That wasn't a hard number. So what's kind of your scale on that?
We're recommending 25. If we get to 26, we'll have that conversation. And at some point, we need to figure out what the right number is to go to 2 classes. Because the last thing we want to do is say we're going to put 30, we're not going to put 30 kids in a class, so you can't accept 30 kids because that's not enough for 2 classes. So we're going to start with a cap.
St. Lawrence has 30.
We're not going to do that. So next year, that 7th grade will go into an 8th grade that's split into 2. Because there'll be, once the new 8th graders come in, they'll fill.
So you have 30 kids, you're going to split and have 2 classes of 15.
Well,
And that's my biggest concern. You've got kids coming from class sizes of 13.
Right.
And then if you're going from 13 to 30, it's going to be like mayhem.
Right.
Not only can they
But not, let me just say this. I don't think it's going to be mayhem, because quite frankly, it's all who stands in the front of the class. I went to school at 54 in my class, and I can speak and write and reading. I mean, there is a general group dynamic that we want to respect in the number. 25 is the ideal number for the interdynamics that have to exist in a classroom. Less, there are advantages and disadvantages. More, there are disadvantages. So that's, but to your question though, there are more classrooms available at St. Lawrence than one for every grade. That's the point. So if we have to split a class, we can. But to your point about 15 in a class, it really becomes a question of what's the advantage of what we do. It's always about the kids. But I would think the maximum number that we were talking about is 25 in this class. But my point, then I don't mean so the shift from a small, you saw the chart. I mean, at St. Jude's, there's one class that has a single student. I think it's, what is it, 4th grade? 3rd grade. There is one child in the 3rd grade. So that's going to be a dramatic shift by that.
And I think definitely someone but I think
It's going to be a change.
it's going to be a big change for the children.
Right, but it may not necessarily be a negative, is my point. If they're gradually introduced, it actually would be a positive. More friends, more interaction, more association. That's my point. It's not necessarily negative because it's bigger.
However, isn't it wrong to Catholic schools and private schools having smaller class sizes? I mean, now you're talking 25, which is equal to the public school system. What is the advantage?
Well, let me just say this. First and foremost, First and foremost, the advantage of coming to a Catholic school is Catholic faith. That's the bottom line. Second of all, I think, again, it's all about the dynamic teacher who is in front of that class and engaging the children. The other thing, quite frankly, is a blended learning model, just as I described, can have 24 children in a class, but only 12 are being instructed, while 12 are doing online study as you switch the children. So there's actually 24 children in a class, but 12 are actually being taught at one time. So you have actually a larger group and smaller instruction simultaneously.
That's only happening in the middle schools.
Well, eventually, depending on how we go forward, it could happen more than the middle school. In strategic planning. Please.
I just wondering about faculty incentives. If we're going to teach an older faculty in blended model, we need to have some kind of incentive to make pay their salaries and principal teachers to incentivize them to.
Well, that's a very interesting point. That is in fact, that issue was one of the major reasons why, remember the first slide I created, the Diocesan Education Commission? Because that is true in all our schools. Our teachers do a phenomenal job at perhaps a fraction of what they're getting paid or could get paid in the public schools. So they are the unsung heroes of Catholic education. And therefore, to your point, that's a systematic problem we have. That in this structure, we're going to try to have to address, we're going to do gradually, because again, we can't go from here to here, but we have to keep moving in that direction because it's a matter of justice, right? So to incentivize them, yeah, we're going to try to do it as best we can by raising their salaries to the point where I'm not sure we could ever meet the public schools, but we have to do far better than what we're doing now.
There isn't just like $500 grant to the teacher decide to use iPads for science class or whatever.
And you don't need me to tell you that the teachers that do this really do it almost sacrificially. They do a phenomenal job for what they're doing. Please, all the way in the back.
I appreciate the fact that the faculty is going to have an opportunity to, I guess, compete for the open roles, for lack of another word. In terms of the principals and the principal selection process, I mean, there's already been language about their school moving over. I mean, the leader's going to set the tone for the new academy so that there isn't this division or perceived division. What's the selection process for the new principal who's going to drive a lot of the new culture of the school?
That's an excellent question.
As soon as this meeting is over, the jobs will be posted. There will be, just like with everything else at the window for the current administrators to apply. We will go through that process as quickly as possible and hopefully name that person very quickly so that we can move to the hiring.
But I'm going to say something, though, since you raised the question of the principals. I think all three principals of the three existing institutions, they are very different people, that's clear. And yet they are all equally professional, competent, and dedicated to the students in their care. And I think they're all here tonight, and they deserve a round of applause. Please. I'm sorry. Please.
What's your current understanding of any differences in the three schools and where they sit academically, specifically that? And how are you going to equalize these kids if they're all in one classroom and one group is higher or lower than the others currently or starting in September?
Yeah, that's pedagogy.
I think we look to the administrators and we look to the teachers. They will get their data from their schools. Blended model helps there, and even if it's in the lower, even if they're in the lower grades, there will be some components of blended learning. And blended learning just means it doesn't always involve technology, it doesn't always involve tremendous investment. So there will be new ways of innovating the way we teach that hopefully can move kids along at a different pace.
Starting in September.
starting in September, there will be some things in place. And now, 'cause where we want to be is not where we're going to start.
What I mean specifically is, so if my daughter who's currently in 7th grade advanced math goes in next year 8th grade advanced math, is that math going to match up with her peers from the 2 other schools, or are you going to have
Who
a
may
bunch
be
of
equally
kids
in
who?
advanced math. That's your point.
Or if it's advanced math or
Right.
regular math, people
Right.
from class from school to
Well,
school,
there is
when
one
they all
curriculum.
blend next
Right.
year.
There is one curriculum though that all the schools follow. It's the same curriculum.
And they're all exactly the same spot in that curriculum?
But that's never true even in the students in the one single grade.
Right.
In the one class. But we have one diocesan curriculum, which is not, by the way, for the record, it is not Common Core. Please.
Could you give us a little insight on the teachers? How are you going to keep all the same teachers? Do they have to reapply? How are you going to read them out or?
You see,
lack
the
of better
teachers go
word?
through the same process that the administrators. That is, there'll be an expedited process now that they first state their intention, whether or not they wish to come back in the fall. Because some, like normally, we usually have between 10 and 15% of our teachers turn over every year in all our schools. But whoever wishes to come, we will go through the same process. That is, they state their intentions, and then there would be an evaluation process that the superintendent and the rest of the staff would help the board to go through to be able to offer positions, and we're going to offer as many positions as registration allows us to do. Those who cannot have a position because we don't have enough classes, then they would have preference in openings that open up in other schools.
So they're going to reapply for their position?
Everyone does.
Okay, just another follow-up. So my daughter is in 7th grade, and she's already at 29 kids in her class. Bringing on other kids obviously is going to be higher than the portion that you allocated. Are you having funding for aides for those classes
Well,
as well?
that's the other piece too that I was thinking, and I'm glad you mentioned it, is because in the structure that we're talking about, even if you exceed 25, let's say you have 26, you can place a full-time aide in the class as well to be the aide to the teacher. There's many ways to cut this cake, but I think our commitment is to try to maintain class sizes to no more than 25. So 29 is in which school?
St. Lawrence,
St. Lawrence. Is there one or two?
one.
There's one. Okay.
So in a situation like that, I mean, thinking positive, I would imagine you're going to split the class.
Or another possibility would be, in dialogue with the board, perhaps putting an aide into the class as well.
Having an aide in addition to the, so we
Teacher.
know we already have 29 now.
Right. Well, and please God, all 29 will come back,
Correct, and then you're going to add more to the class.
in which case we would need to split.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Angela?
Is there any effort to have religious teaching in this new school?
Meaning?
Or is that, well, a religious as one of the teachers?
Oh, a religious.
Religious, not religion.
Okay. I'll say, well, yeah. That was the easy question. The answer to that is, I would love for that to happen. But as you know, or may you not know, religious are assigned by their provincials, just as I assign priests. So I have to have conversations with the provincial to see whether, in this case, most of the congregations are women congregations, she would be willing.
So will you have that conversation?
I already have.
Excellent.
When I was in Florida last week at the Legatus Convention. Yep. Okay, please, all the way in the back.
Yes, so I'm a product of the St. Gabriel School Milford closure, and we're unfortunately back into a similar situation. But I actually, based on my experience there, my experience here, I do want to commend you on the presentation you delivered and the information, because frankly, it's not what I've gotten in the past. However, to that end, one of the things that were an overriding common theme to everything was demographics and the enrollment. And I know we had a lot of questions about marketing, and I believe one of the slides indicated that a lot of the parental governing board will have to deal with marketing. But so that history doesn't repeat itself
Right.
as it relates to a decrease in demographic and an increased need for viability. Is the diocese prepared to participate through funding, in addition to funding through the new school, not only as it's unveiled, but in perpetuity throughout the years?
First of all, I thank you for your question, and I thank you for your commitment to Catholic education with all the transition that your children had to go through. So I thank you for you still standing here. Very testimony to your faith. And I would also say this, one of the things that was announced this past Wednesday at Sacred Heart University was the public launch of Foundations in Education. The Foundations in Education is an independently created, non-for-profit, philanthropic foundation whose sole mission is to support Catholic education in 3 ways. Number 1, the Bishop Scholarship Fund is now in Foundations in Education. Number 2 is to raise money for grants for innovation and extracurricular expansion of offerings. And number 3 is to raise money for grants for transformational leadership training, teacher professional development, some of the stuff we talked about. So to answer your question, we are absolutely committed to raise money so that this academy, if it has an initiative, could go to Foundations in Education and ask to grant money to finance it. We will not have millions of dollars, but we'll have money for seed to continue the innovation. Because the truth is, we need to always now, from this point forward, we need to remain creative and innovative in our education for the sake of our children and to make sure that others see the value that we see in the school. So that's a long answer to a short question. Please.
Thank you for your presentation, Bishop. The question is, since we're still kind of building the engine of the car, we don't know who the teachers are going to be and the programs that they're going to be working on. Is there consideration to extend that priority deadline, or can we double enroll if need be? I'd like to do some shopping, I'll be honest, to make sure that I'm making the right choice for my child.
Right.
So there's schools that are already established and we can go visit them, but
Yep.
within 2 weeks of not being allowed to probably shadow at those other institutions. And I'd like the opportunity to see what this turns into so that I can give it a fair assessment. Is that something that can be done?
First of all, you are refreshingly honest.
Just one myself.
Because I think many other people are thinking the same thing. And if I was sitting in your chair, I'd be thinking the same thing. If I had a little boy or a little girl, I want to make sure that they were in a great school. And, the schools are established. There's great schools established, not that far away. So that is why we created these timelines. So these are absolutely in stone so that we can get back to you balancing 2 goods. We want to give you information as quickly as possible so that you have an informed decision. But on the other hand, we don't want to do a process so quickly that we don't do our due diligence. Right? So my appeal to you is to please be patient as we roll this out in the next 6 weeks, and become active in the sense of, as we send you information, feel free to give input back. So the only thing I can really tell you is you have to do what's best in your mind for your child. But I'm confident that when it's all unveiled, faculty, staff, and all the rest, that you will be very pleased.
It's not, according to your deadline, unless I mixed up the dates, April 1st is when we.
Correct. So that's 6 weeks past, right.
And we only have 2 weeks to do the rest.
No, but you know what? The truth is,
Well, you turn it away if we wait until it's.
no. Priority registration means that, for example, if this is what the diocese has always done. If you always have re-registration, no, it's an excellent question. You re-register, and then you allow new students to register who are not in the school. That's what priority means. It's the re-registration process. So my point to you is, we are going to work as fast as we can to do this. And therefore, if you come to the decision at the end of March you want to register in the school, if you're in one of our schools, I would not worry about that. In one of these three schools, I would not worry about that. But for those of you who are ready to make that commitment, and I hope many of you are, I would urge you to do that because of the Bishop Scholarship Fund. That is what concerns me equally than the registration. Let's take 3 more questions and then I'll say other questions. Okay, please, sir.
Bishop, I want to first thank you and all the boards involved with this. Some of the parents felt that it wasn't very transparent. My dad's a deacon in the Archdiocese of Hartford, so I understand the process you guys all go through, and I appreciate that. I want you to know that there's nobody more important to me than my kids, except my wife. And
That was very wise.
So I really appreciate, and I can see, I see what you described for the school. Going forward, different conversation is, what are your thoughts on our choice for Secretary of Education?
Oh, next question. I will say this. I am a firm advocate for school choice. And the reason I am, because what made America great is competition. And not because I'm standing before you as a Catholic bishop or as the administrator of an educational system, but the truth of the matter is, I have always advocated school choice. And I am hoping that everyone who is sitting in this room would feel the same way. But let me also say something else, for the full record. I am the spiritual father of every child in this diocese. That is my apostolic responsibility. There has never been a time in the history of Bridgeport, there has never been a time in the history of the United States where the majority of Catholic children were in Catholic school. Even in 1965, when there were 5.6 million Catholic children in Catholic school, there were more Catholics in public school. And therefore, when I say I stand before you, an advocate of school choice, it is not just simply because we would benefit as a religious school, but because I believe public education will also benefit. Every child deserves an excellent education. That's the bottom line. But we do provide that excellent education, and it is faith-based. So it is the whole child being formed in the image and likeness of Christ. There is no better education to be had, period, in my estimation.
Would there be a possibility of having a bus in Monroe?
Well, that is
Because it would be a lot of people driving from Monroe, trying to get to the parking lot, and
Okay.
that type of thing.
Okay, so I'm going to speak for the board. Okay? And that is, because I really should, but I'm going to. And that is, I think that's something that really depends on what the interest is for parents in Monroe to come to the school. Because it would be far more convenient to have a bus. But a bus is about $58,000 for a school bus to run. So it's a significant expenditure too. And I'm going to tell you something else. You know where I come from. Okay? One of the strangest things we have here in Connecticut is this busing that doesn't cross town lines. I think it is crazy. For the very situation that we're sitting here and you could be 3 miles away and you can't get busing to school. That makes no sense to me. And as odd as New York is, all right, not only does New York State allow busing between counties, but do you know that New York State pays for busing even outside New York State? I forget how many miles you can go out. It's 13 or 15 miles out of the state. So we have children in our Danbury schools that live in New York State and come on school buses to Danbury. And that's something we as a community have to advocate, that the legislature looks at.
I mean, I don't mind driving my daughter every day, but I don't want to be stuck in the parking lot.
Sure, of course.
You know.
Exactly, coming in and out and back and forth. It's absolutely true. Hold on a second. Hold on.
Going back to enrollment per class for a second, you
Yep.
mentioned the goal being 25, and then depending on how much older, we either have 2 classes or potentially 3. Would we ever end up in a situation where wait lists
and praying that does not happen. And so I don't know the answer to that question. It all depends on how many children actually come over. The school capacity for St. Lawrence is, I forget what it is, 300 and, it's almost 400. So we could theoretically accommodate everyone, if everybody can. Let's do two more questions. Sir, please.
Do you know if the board discussed the viability of use of e-books to avoid the cost of hard copies?
Of hard copies. It's a great question. So the board has not yet met because now they're going to be put, I have to choose them. But that's the sort of input that would be very helpful. The answer to that question is that is where I think we should eventually move. Absolutely. And Chromebooks, which are not that expensive. Right. Let's do two more. Please, in the back.
So I'm a graduate of St. Joe's, and one of the things I loved about St. Joe's and Catholic schools is the integration of your pastors and things like that. But how do you also keep the identity of each individual school while combining together?
Okay, so I'm going to
And
just
the,
take...
like the parishes.
Yeah, so I'm going to just tweak your question in this way. How do you keep the connection, how do you keep the identity of a child who may be part of the parish family of St. Joseph's if they're attending a regional school or this school, this academy? It's an excellent question. Part of why the members, I'm very grateful to the pastors who are all here also tonight, that they're willing to be co-members because they are an essential link. But what I hope would be that the clergy, God bless you, the clergy, religious, and lay leaders of the parishes would be present to the academy. Let me give an example of what I mean. When I was the pastor of St. Dominic's in Bensonhurst, we did not have a school. One of the few parishes in Brooklyn that never had a school. A lot of the children in my parish went to St. Athanasius School next door, huge school. So I would periodically go to that school to visit, celebrate Mass, visit the classroom, so that they had a connection to the pastor. And therefore, as co-members, we are all going to be present, the pastors, myself, to the school community. And that's one of the ways you can make the link. One of the ways. Let's make all right, two more questions. One more.
Speaking of all the traffic coming in, that intersection's a bad intersection to begin with. Now you're bringing all these extra families in, potentially from other towns. Is there a plan to control that traffic in that area? How you try to avoid that?
Now, I have to tell you, I don't know the answer. Yes, now that you raised the issue, I'm going to make sure that it's dealt with. But I don't have a specific answer yet, but we will deal with it. We will deal with it. How we will deal with it, I'm not exactly sure, but we will deal with it. Last question. You have the last word.
So come Monday, I'm sure all our kids will know, any support systems, anything, we have the pastors come over, maybe talk with all
Right.
of us as we all are transitioning.
Would you want to speak on your efforts and the past? I think it's an excellent idea. If the pastors could come over to the school, or the priests, or whoever, just to be able to meet with the children and speak with them, because they will need to be reassured, first and foremost. But I'm going to tell you one thing before, and that is, I'm going to rely on you, my friends, because you are their God-given parents, guardians, protectors, to also give that word of assurance, because when it comes from you, it makes all the difference in the world. And even if you yourself still have questions, we can answer them, but they're really going to look to you for some sort of consolation as well. But the efforts?
I met with the faculty and the administrators before this meeting, and that's one of the things we talked about, is how will they, as the first line, work with the students. And I'm very confident. I think if I asked you how many of you think the teachers are great, most of you would raise your hand, right? Let's try it. How many of you think you have great teachers in the building? Okay, so look around. This is the pool that will be seating the new school. So we're not going to go out and find crazy people. It's your teachers that you already love that we'll be pulling in to work in this new school. They will be the first line. They know your children the best. They will help us with this transition, and they will help explain why this is, although temporarily creates some uncertainty, it is a positive thing. It is a good thing. They'll be the first. The principals will help. Our office is has already scheduled visits with the school. So we will come in to give assurance from our office that, yes, they're right, this is what your new classroom could look like. These are some of the activities. Yes, you do those field trips, yes, we're going to figure out where we're going to go next. You know, those kinds of things. So we will meet with the kids, we'll work with the teachers, make sure they have the resources and the information.
My friends, you may have other questions, and I will stay behind if you want to answer them privately. To be honest, there is a lot of expertise behind this number as well in the staff, that you have more particular questions. You could call that number, don't call it in the middle of the night, but call it a reasonable hour, and you will get an answer. My last comment to you is this. I stand before you. I am willing to walk with you on this journey. I'm going to ask you to walk with me on this journey to give birth to this new academy, because I firmly believe that it will be a tremendous opportunity for our children to not only inherit the gift of Catholic education, but position them in every way possible we can do together to give them the very best, which is what all of us in this room want to do for the children that God has given us. I thank you for your time tonight.